Alright, so just one note real quick before we go into Wonder Woman. My initial intention was I did watch War Machine last night, Brad Pitt's Netflix movie from the director of The Rover and Animal Kingdom, and the original intention was for it to be reviewed with Wonder Woman on this same video, but after watching it, it just I really just have not a whole lot to say about it because it's really just that insignificant and just kind of totally seems to be missing the mark on what it was trying to say or what exactly it was trying to do in whatever manner. Like, it was like some of it's supposed to be satire, some of it's supposed to be comedy, then it tries to go like full on Catherine Bigelow by the end of it, and all kind of in the name of saying something about the current state of war and all that. But it pretty much just kind of mildly fails on all those accounts. Like, it occasionally has moments, like a really good scene with Keith Stanfield where he talks about how confused he is about all this. And it's got a lot of great smaller actors in it, like Alan Ruck and Griffin Dunne, who have these nice moments and everything, doing the whole kind of behind-the-scenes war stuff. But overall, it's just... And Pitt's not in a really good place right now as far as performances go, with this being pretty much right after Allied. So hopefully he finds his ground again. I'm sure he will. But yeah, just overall, I just really don't have enough to say about it to really go in full. Later on in the year, I'll probably, well, I'll most definitely catch up on all the stuff that I've missed, seeing only one movie a week since March. So I'll kind of probably do all of those kind of in the same vicinity, so it might be in there. But otherwise, right now, I've just, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on that. So let's go into Wonder Woman, where, for starters, we're building our big universe now. We are past 3 movies, and it's always kind of, I think I would say that this probably should have been where it started, not necessarily just because of its quality, but the one thing I feel like the DC Extended Universe is doing weirdly right now is the order we've been going in, because it seems very much like we could have built up more to Batman vs. Superman and not just have it be the second movie. It seemed like a much bigger movie, like it needed more to build up to it, and so starting with Superman, then going right into Batman vs. Superman, which would almost be... It's almost a DC equivalent of an Avengers movie with how much they put in it. And then throwing in Suicide Squad as the third one. It just kind of seems like... I guess it's a way to introduce a lot of the characters early before we go into all of them crossing over once, even though we're pretty much past that, only 4 movies in. But this feels like it would have been, not just because it'd be the first one chronologically, but it just feels like it would have been a better branching off point, especially since one of the great things that this movie does is it really doesn't do a whole lot to try to tie into everything. The only real tie-in we have to the rest of the series so far is the very first scene, Bruce Wayne sends her the picture. And that's the only thing they really tried. Unless there's like tiny, tiny Easter eggs in there I didn't catch the first time, there is no trying to connect to other movies in here apart from that little follow-up to their relationship in Batman vs. Superman. So, yeah. And to go on that, we have introduced this new DC logo. I'm not much into this whole DC's just trying to do what Marvel's doing battle thing. And like one's better than the other and all that, but it's just kind of hard to say that there are some things that will surely have echoes from what Marvel's doing in this series, starting with this new DC logo, which is a very nice logo, by the way, but it's, you know, reminiscent. And the thing here also is that there will obviously, going on that also, there's going to be inevitable comparisons between this and the first Captain America movie, which I totally understand, but I don't think it, you know, undermines this movie in any way. But there's also kind of, it kind of felt like a cross between the first Captain America movie and Thor, which, to my understanding, Patty Jenkins supposedly had, like, an actual idea for Thor that could have gotten off the ground, but ultimately didn't. After seeing this, I could totally see that, but it's probably better she got this, because it's a much better fit for sure. I think the one thing she was known for apart from this was Monster, the movie Charlize Theron won her Oscar for. Certainly a different direction, but still, somehow still a very fitting choice. I was concerned, I was actually concerned for a few reasons, because number one, as far as the overall reception for the DC Universe, we haven't gotten very far prior to Wonder Woman. Personally, I actually really like Man of Steel. I did like it when I first saw it, but I actually liked it even more when I saw it again. And Batman vs. Superman and Suicide Squad, I pretty much have the same feeling. I think Batman vs. Superman is a little better. And every time, I think Suicide Squad is okay. But it seems like every time I talk about Suicide Squad, I'm complaining about it. I don't know what that says, but still, it is certainly not, it's not in the terrible, horrible place that most critics will have you thinking it's in. Well, of course, that depends on your opinion, but still. And here, obviously, we do have an upgrade. A lot of people are saying that it's like a tremendous upgrade. I do think Wonder Woman is very good, but yeah, I'm still, like I said, I think Man of Steel is legitimately good, which apparently these days is an unpopular opinion. I don't know, but it's, yeah, so as far as that, I was a little concerned, even though the reviews were extremely positive, and they were saying how much of an upgrade this was. Particularly when we got, well, first off, we have our opening, which is fine, but it's pretty much kind of a needless framing device. But going into this opening, when we start off with her as a child, and it's kind of basically a very generic origin story starting with the child. I feel like I was watching like some Conan the Barbarian movie or something, to be honest. And not even Schwarzenegger, like, who I've totally forgotten now, who played him in the remake. I keep wanting to say Momoa, but I'm not even sure if that's right anymore, or if I'm just confused because he's also Aquaman, but we're getting off. And this opening is also not only just kind of the generic child wants to be what the adults are thing, but also it's also quite exposition heavy in a not so subtle way. Particularly when it's like Robin Wright and Connie Nielsen are on their horses, and it's just like, let's see who can get more exposition in-game. But then once she grows up into Gal Gadot, then it's finally, we really hit something. Particularly, what I really liked about this movie also was, I complain about the opening where she's a child and we have to go through the whole, she wants to be a warrior, but they won't let her be a warrior because she's a child, etc., but she's going to do it anyway, all that. We've seen it all before a billion times. But then, once she grows up, and we see her as adult Diana, this movie starts, like, instantly. Like, there is no kind of, like, bullshit or screwing around or anything. It gets right straight into the point when Chris Pine comes through and crashes into the water, and then from then on, the movie just goes. And that's the great thing too, is I was really put off when I saw that it was 2 hours and 21 minutes. It does not feel like 2 hours and 21 minutes at all. I was quite blown away by the pacing of this movie, and it was, because that's the thing too, is you just kind of have to keep it going, because even in these moments that in another movie would be the slow moments, like the romance or Diana trying to kind of blend in with a surrounding she is completely not used to, they still managed to make it charming and funny and even a little bit romantic. And a lot of that obviously is her and Pine's chemistry, which I honestly may not have predicted, because as I said before, unless Chris Pine is in something like Hell or High Water or a Joe Carnahan movie, I actually think he's pretty bland. But here he's able to bring a lot of charm and a lot of things to this role that would have, in any other movie, probably would have just been the generic romantic role. But there really is something here, especially since love actually it has to really really work. So thank God it does, because they actually kind of take that whole, without saying too much, kind of making love a plot point by the end of the movie, like love itself a plot point. And I can kind of see that going in other ways. Like I know the Anne Hathaway line in Interstellar about how like the only thing that transcends, time and space is love or whatever, and everybody kind of thought that line was terrible and cheesy. I honestly never really minded that Hathaway scene in Interstellar, so I don't mind this here either. Especially since it actually manages to get there so genuinely. It doesn't seem like something just shoehorned in so they can have some hopefully impactful ending. They actually pretty much earn most of what they get towards. And then, because that was the thing too, was for a while I was thinking about the fact that it wasn't just another one of those, because obviously movies, especially superhero movies nowadays, we can't just have, that's what was so great about Civil War, was that a lot of people didn't like the downgrade because it just seemed so, but actually I think it really works that we have Civil War where it's all these Marvel characters and they're all together and they're all fighting, and the whole big bad thing behind all this is just Daniel Bruhl. No big special powers, no nothing. Just a really pissed off, vengeful Daniel Bruhl. So, and the bad habit with superhero movies lately is everything has to be the end of the world. And for the most part, I really liked that this movie didn't go in that angle. It was just Danny Huston and the actress from The Skin I Live In, whose name just escaped me. Shit. But, the thing here is that for a while that's what it is. It's kind of like not too Danny Huston here is not too dissimilar from Hugo Weaving before he pulled his face off in the first Avenger, but and so for a while it just seems like that. It's just kind of the poison plot where it's not like, I mean, yes, like, they're saying millions will die, but it's not like some giant sky orb, and it's not like, constant destruction or all that. And then it does kind of get to a point to where we kind of reach that. But the thing is we kind of knew from the get-go that the God of War was going to play a part in this. So you're kind of expecting it throughout the movie. But even with that, like, obviously, an example would be Batman vs. Superman, when Lex creates Doomsday. And the thing about Batman vs. Superman was, even though, yeah, you can't say that it wasn't built up to or that it came out of nowhere, because throughout the whole movie, we cut back to Lex doing the thing that will ultimately form Doomsday. But still, when you watch, like, the first 45 minutes to an hour Batman vs. Superman, and then you cut to the Doomsday fight, it's, you almost can't believe it's the same movie. It's like, how in God's name did we even get to this, and why are we here so fast? This is supposed to be Batman vs. Superman. And now this. But when we have our big, giant, effects-riddled ending here, we've actually kind of surprisingly gradually got there throughout the movie. It felt like it didn't, like, even though it is really, really big, it still kind of felt like through the whole movie you were watching the same movie the whole time, which you can't necessarily say about a lot of movies that go for those really big endings these days. So I liked how they were able to kind of pull off that cohesion. I guess I should probably mention how I feel about Gal Gadot herself. She's kind of like, well, to be totally honest, and please don't hate me for this, but I never really got all the big, jazz about her in Batman vs. Superman. Everybody's saying, oh, she's like one of the absolute high points of Batman vs. Superman. She's like the only reason I liked Batman vs. Superman. She's in Batman vs. Superman for like 3 minutes. I know sometimes that can make a huge difference, but honestly, it was just fine to me. Like, I don't dislike it for any reason, but it was nothing that made me say this is the high point of the movie. I mean, when she comes down and stops Batman from dying, yeah, that's a really big scene and a really cool moment, but, I mean, people are saying, Gal Gadot this and Gal Gadot that about Batman vs. Superman, but it's like, she's probably more CGI in Batman vs. Superman than she is Gal Gadot, and that's, but I'm okay with people going for that, so. And then I just saw Keeping Up with the Joneses not that long ago, which I really, really don't recommend anybody doing ever. But, so the thing here was that when I would see her in obviously a couple of Fast and Furious movies she was in as well. But as far as like Batman vs Superman, I was basically I kind of feel about her now that I did then too, and that is I basically feel the same about her as I do about Chris Hemsworth, which is particularly in the Thor movies, which is it's not so much the acting ability that I think makes them work, just kind of their presence in general. You know, how they make the parts work just because they kind of, like, you could hardly give them dialogue, and they would bring what they need to the role. And it's not necessarily more about how they are as actors in the roles. There are those moments, sure, like, where she has to be charming to make the scenes work when when the movie's almost My Fair Lady, when she's like trying stuff on and they try to do those comedy beats with it, when she gets like the ice cream and stuff like that, and tries to take her sword out in public as if it's a normal thing, and those kind of things that do work. And I do also like that. I think another reason beyond her that they do work is also the fact that another problem with like big blockbuster movies like this is sometimes when they're trying to be comedic, they'll take it a little too far, and sometimes they try to be a little too comedic. And this movie very much could have done that, but I feel like the comedy was there just right. Like it's there relatively often because we were doing the whole fish out of water thing, and the way she understands the world and the way Chris Pine understands the world are totally different, but they're still falling in love. But have two totally different reactions to this, and how the way he's kind of playing off her, and then the way she plays off him playing off her, and it's kind of that whole thing does work, and it's not too blown up. Which, like I said, in a movie that's 2 hours and 21 minutes, you kind of expect everything to be overdone, and really not a whole lot is. I imagine some people will have problems with the finale, and how there is. I think a problem people might have is that there's kind of a double finale, where it's like once again, without saying too much, it's basically one bad guy and then it's another bad guy. And I can understand why that would seem successive. It's almost like, you know, the false finish thing, where it just seems like it's there to drag the movie on. But the thing is this first kind of, you know, villain fight is really, it's cool, and it might have people making Princess Bride references, but it's but it's so brief. As cool as it is, it's very, very brief, and anybody with half a brain knows that this is not the finale. So so it kind of builds itself up in just the right way to kind of give you like a 1-2 punch of an ending, but without making it feel like it's being dragged out intentionally. It all kind of has its purpose in the long run. And another thing I forgot to mention about something that she does well in this, and also the way she's written, where we have to have a progression here, because it's obviously starts off and she's just a child and she doesn't know much about this, but then even when she's an adult, there's still something sort of like, it's like a childlike naivete or something. And it's like, well, we know she gets from this point to when we saw her in Batman vs. Superman, so the question is, how does this, you know, little naive person come to be the badass warrior that we know she is in Batman vs. Superman and will no doubt have to be by the end of this movie? Which, once again, is a transition that works really well, because the movie is surprisingly well focused on characters, because I've already talked about the chemistry between her and Pine, but there's also their little gang here, where they could have just been, you know, kind of like the Dum Dum Dugan scenes in the first Avenger, where it's like, hey, here's the gang, and then, hey, there goes the gang, and nobody cares. But here, they kind of, they all have like their individual personalities and how they kind of got to these points. They even have their own tiny little pieces of backstory that are just really quickly put in there during dialogue that don't feel expository, but do give you a feel of what this character is like as a whole, even though they're only kind of a small supporting character. Like when, the moment when Ewan Bremner is singing, and they're talking about, like, this is the side of him that we haven't seen in a while, and and the whole thing they do with his character where he's like, they build up how he's this great shooter and he's the best shooter and all that, and then there's a sniper and then he can't shoot at it, and then it's like, so they even say like, after all that build up he can't actually shoot. And then there's the guy that like wanted to be an actor before he got caught up in all this, and it's, so they really do kind of enrich in those smaller characters too, as well as the bigger ones. The villains can probably be seen as a little one note, but I still think that I like, what is her name, Dr. Poison or something. How she kind of has that, it's funny that Danny Houston is right here, but kind of that Jack Houston mask from Boardwalk Empire, and how she's kind of this cool villain that doesn't really have to do a whole lot, but every time she's on screen I feel like shit's gonna go down. And that's what a really good villain can do, and Danny Houston too. I've always liked Danny Houston's presence. He's another one of those actors where I can't necessarily point out a really, really standout performance apart from, say, something like 30 Days of Night. But that's the thing, is when you see his performance in 30 Days of Night, you think it's not so much a performance so much as just his presence is what really makes it what it is. That, and it's kind of funny that he was Stryker in X-Men Origins, and then it's like, as soon as you're in X-Men Origins, you immediately want to jump ship, so now he's in DC. So yeah, so overall, I do think the action scenes are good. Like, obviously the No Man's Land scene is gonna be praised for a long time, and the final battle, too, I think is really good, even if, you know, it's a little effects heavy, but still. And occasionally there are some effects where, like, people are moving, and they obviously look very, especially in the opening, where people are moving or kicking, and they look very, very animated. But, for the most part, the scenes are really good. I do love, when she's, like, fighting in that building, and then, again, at the end, and the theme kicks in, because the Wonder Woman theme, as we learned from Batman vs. Superman, is really cool. However, there's one thing that Patty Jenkins seems to have taken from Zack Snyder. It's that fucking slow-mo. It just... that's because here's the thing, is these are actually some really quality fight scenes going on here. No matter how effects heavy they are, they're still really good and really exciting. And then just as the fight gets really exciting, there'll be this really drawn out slow-mo bullshit. It's just really, it's like it's like watching The Raid and somebody just keeps pausing it. It just really kind of disrupts what is ultimately this really badass moment. And there are moments where it's like when she's dodging bullets, it makes sense. Because when she's dodging, bullets are too fast for you to see, but you need to know where she has to dodge them from. So, like, when she's dodging bullets, it makes sense for slow-mo. If she's just sliding across the floor or bringing her leg around for a kick, we really don't need slow-mo. Just kick the dude and go on to the next dude. That rhythm and that really fast flow are what make the fight scenes really good. Like, the warehouse scene in Batman vs. Superman. Do you know why that scene gets so much acclaim and why a lot of people consider it like one of the absolute best scenes of that movie? It's because Zack Snyder said, you know what, I'm not going to do the slow-mo today. And voila, we had a really awesome scene that people really remember. And I think that's a huge problem with the action scenes here, because they could have that quality, and they do have that quality. But every single time the slow-mo kicks in, which is a lot, it just hits the brakes really hard on the scene and just really takes the impact out of it, which sucks, because this could have been some really, really great stuff as a whole, and not just this every now and then having a portion of it that sticks out. So, yes, so I am hoping that this kind of reinvigorates excitement. Something that really, really brought me down was, my brother is like one of the biggest, you know, Batman fans there is and all that, and he's all about this stuff. And I was talking to him on the phone about a month ago, and he said, I just saw the new DC trailer, or I saw the new Justice League trailer, and I'm not excited anymore. I'm not, or not nearly as much as I was, and I was like, oh shit. If that's the case, I don't know what we're going to do. But it's, and then obviously a lot of people were saying, you know, like, people absolutely hate Man of Steel, people absolutely hate Batman vs. Superman, people absolutely hate Suicide Squad. Those people are definitely out there, and they're very, very vocal about it. Obviously, the antidote is to just stick to your own opinion and not give a shit, which is what you should do in any case, with any movie, in any franchise, at all. But there's just something where it was like, I have a feeling this series may be short-lived, because Ben Affleck, when he dropped out of directing the Batman, it was kind of like, I have a bad feeling about this. And then there were rumors. Obviously, there's going to be rumors like every single day in a big franchise like this. But still, when even rumors get out that Affleck feels like he might be done as Batman, it's like, well, yeah, this is just going completely to shit, isn't it? It's just, but with this reaction that Wonder Woman's getting and how good it actually is, we're really hoping for kind of a reinvigoration. Like I said, I'm still a pretty big fan of Man of Steel, and Batman vs Superman and Suicide Squad are fine. I really don't hate them, and I do have a lot of hope that even though I don't think they're as great as maybe some diehard fans do, nor as bad as the detractors do, I do think there's still some ground here that I would really love to see built off, and I would like to think that Wonder Woman's going to really, really reinvigorate this, and maybe kind of help people, you know, open up a little bit, because it's very, obviously, like I said, I'm really not about this ongoing battle of what's better between DC and Marvel right now, because obviously Wonder Woman's only our 4th movie to go off of for the DC universe, and we've got a billion Marvel movies now. And obviously, while I think the Marvel movies, I agree, are consistently good, and sometimes we get some really great ones like the first Iron Man or the first Avengers or Civil War, it's very much, there's still room. There's still room for the fact that, you know, because Marvel, even though having those great ones, does have some misses. We know Iron Man 2 is not the greatest. We know Thor 2 isn't the greatest. Doctor Strange didn't do a whole lot for me when I saw it a second time. But there's still, maybe, you know, the DC universe is kind of having some hiccups now, but with seeing what makes Wonder Woman good and how people are reacting to that, let's hope that they really kind of see those parts of it and kind of build off of that, and then maybe we can get somewhere and really get this thing really, really off the ground. To a mostly universal extent. Obviously, you're not going to please everybody, and there are some people that have a lot of visceral hatred. Maybe they can get turned around at least a little bit. Maybe not on the movies they already hate, but we can build up and make things even better, and then we'll get somewhere, hopefully. I guess we'll just have to see, but obviously, it's kind of hard to predict anything. At this rate, we probably, not a lot of people, I imagine, were predicting that this would be as well received as it is, given what Batman vs Superman and Suicide Squad have been through. But yeah, we'll just have to see. But I would really like to see this take off, because it's like, I was having a conversation recently, and it was like, if they absolutely must start the DC universe over again, can they at least keep the same cast? Like, just don't recast anybody, but still start over. But if we can get on that, then hopefully we can keep this alive, and they can get up to where, I don't know, Marvel's a pretty hard reach, but because they've been at it for a lot longer, so it's really hard to say. But I do think the DC universe does seem to have much more of an eye for creativity and kind of letting directors do their thing. So it'd be really nice to kind of get a franchise as big as Marvel that actually, not to say that the Marvel movies don't have creativity, like the story weaving that the writers for something like Civil War did with that story is just absolutely magnificent, and something the DC Universe could really learn from. But Marvel can also learn a lot from the obvious creativity that the DC Universe has as far as a directorial standpoint or a technical standpoint. So it's all just, I guess we'll see. I guess we'll wait till November and then see what happens, and then we'll go from there. So that's pretty much what we got for now. The Mummy next week will probably be a day or so later than it usually is, because I'll be seeing it a day later, but apart from that, things should be relatively normal. So Versus will probably be in place of where the Mummy would be, but it'll just be the next day. So yeah. So yeah, that's it. I think we're done here.